Hey everyone, welcome back to Shop Life. We're back at it again with this 1 Series track build. It just got back to us. We're going to be installing a quad tip exhaust. So once again, this is a 2012 135i with the N55 engine, 6-speed manual. I've already done the clutch job on here that also came for, but I've got the exhaust and everything off. I'm going to be showing you some of the steps and what all is required as far as converting, the stock single output exhaust into quad tips, both sides, just like the 1M. So the actual thing that we're going to be doing on here is we're going to be installing a bunch of the 1M parts, including like the 1M bumper bar, the 1M trunk tray, and also like the actual 1M exhaust. So we're putting an aftermarket exhaust that's made for the 1M, but we're going to be installing it on this 135i. So like I said, in order to do that, we do have to change a lot of things over to the 1M style. So let me just show you some of the parts that we've collected. So this is, most of these parts are exactly for the 1M. So this is like the heat shield for underneath the car where the exhaust is going to go through. We've got this whole tray. So on the 1 Series, the tray is like this plastic composite. It's just bolted in. We can unbolt the one that's already in there, which is a little bit bigger, like the cavity that's inside. The 1M tray is a lot smaller, and there's more space on this side to run the exhaust through. Then we've also got to relocate some of the charcoal canister lines. So we've got some 1M lines for that as well. This is all emissions related stuff. Also, we need an extended battery terminal. Matter of fact, we need both extended battery terminals. A couple of other connectors, another vent line, some rubber mounts for the exhaust. And we also need this 1M bumper bar because it's got separate mounting points for the exhaust. So you can see there's one more. On the stock one, there's only one on the driver's side, but the 1M one has two, one on each side. If you were gonna go to an exhaust shop, they could probably fabricate one of those hangers to put it on, but this is more of something that you can do yourself. So that's why we have all of these parts, and we kind of wanted to keep as much of it, factory, like fitment wise, as we could. So this is the exhaust that's gonna be going on, made for the 1M. It's actually a multi-piece design. And then we've also got the tips that go on here. So this would not fit on the factory non-M1 series just because this muffler section is just too big and there's not enough space with that whole tray and everything in there. So if you've got the stock size battery that came on the non-M1 series, you are going to need a shorter battery to fit in the 1M tray. I know it looked really funky.
Funky?
I know I look really funny with these glasses on, but this dust is no joke, especially I don't think these covers have ever been taken off, so it's just dusty everywhere. But yeah, we've pretty much got everything taken off from underneath, all the covers that attach to the bumper, as well as all the stuff that attaches to this under tray. All that stuff is taken off. It's just all bolts and a couple of push pins. All that stuff, once you see it, you'll know exactly what it is. Mostly 8mm, 10mm bolts and screws. So now we're gonna bring the car back down, take the bumper off all the way, take off this tray, and then we'll just keep going at it. And this thing is really in there. It's only like a foam gasket. I don't think it's glued on at all, because the new one just came with the foam gasket. So I think just over the years, it's just like with all the heat, it just glued itself together. There it goes. Alright, so the car, as you guys saw on the bumper, there was a pretty big gash over here. When it was hit, like after it had been totaled, it got hit again after we had fixed it. And that's when all of this happened. And then after that, I think it did go to a collision shop, and they did remove the bumper just to see for damage or whatever. And they forgot to put a lot of stuff back together. So there's missing a nut on this plastic thing right here. There's a couple of tabs that were broken. It was missing a nut on the top of each tail light on both sides. And just overall, yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they forgot to put a bunch of stuff, and they didn't.
That's not even forgetting. That's just that's not forgetting.
They're just lazy. They just didn't want to put it back.
Yeah.
And what sucks is, like, I wish at least if they would have left the fasteners. So on this side they use a different type of nut. I guess they did lose them. That's probably why they didn't put them back. Because one of the nuts was different, and then on this side it had two of the same ones and missing the third one as well. But that's what happens. We're just going to remove this whole bar and replace it anyways, so we don't have to worry about this gash. And we're just going to reuse the nuts, so all that stuff should be fine. Now the next step is we're going to replace these lines since we're going to be relocating the charcoal canister. This is the hardest one by far because it goes to the fuel tank. So you do have to like remove the back seat and drop the fuel tank just a little bit on the passenger side so you have access to pull this off and replace it. So since this is the hardest, we're just going to start with this one and get it knocked out. So you can see the line runs right to the fuel pump up here. So for us, there's still not enough space between the car and the actual, fuel tank itself. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna drop the fuel tank on this side a little bit so we can pull this line off all the way. Alright, so even after removing the strap, there's still not enough space for me to like lower the tank to get that vent line out. So I'm just gonna loosen this nut as well. And hopefully that'll give us a little bit more play.
He said it's coming. Let's see. Yeah. All right, got it. Yeah. Yep.
So here's a line that we just finished routing. It's a pain in the butt to go over the subframe and everything, but it can be done without kinking the hose or anything like that. There's a lot of like flexible spots, so just wiggle it around, you'll see where all the clips are, and it goes in. Now we're gonna go to the next step, which is the line that connects to this blue one right here. So let's pull that one off next. And we're going to be replacing it with this black one. Now onto this last line. And we'll be replacing it with this darker blue line. Now as far as this white line goes, once I have the tray and the new canister location put in place, now I can figure out how we need to mount this, because this line is not available at the dealership, so we're just gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do. And this line actually runs all the way to the front of the car in the engine bay. So we'll probably just cut it somewhere, or we'll probably heat it up and remold it. Once we have everything in, we'll figure it out. It's finally time to put the 1M tray inside. Let's do it. For these two, there's a little bracket that goes on here once you put the battery in. So that goes in last. But besides that, the tray is in. Let's lift her back up and see where that charcoal canister lines up. Alright, so we've got the canister back up. The 2 lines that we changed, well, the 3 ones, they're all hooked up. Only thing that's left is this white line. So I've actually found a way to route it without kinking the hose or anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut off this section right here, pull off this quick connector, and then we're going to cut this hose right about here and plug it right in, and we should be good. Whew. That took a lot longer than it should have. We'll just put some kind of felt right here and also figure out a way to fasten it, that way it doesn't hit the subframe, just so, you know, for future proofing it. We also need to find a way to secure this wire, but all the connectors and everything lined up fine, even for this sensor right here. All that lined up great actually. In order to extend this connector all the way out here though, I did have to remove some of this electrical tape that BMW put on it from factory. So now I'm just going to retape all of this section up, that way everything's protected again. And then we'll just figure out a way to mount everything, that way nothing is rubbing against any metal. We don't want anything rubbing anywhere, that way it doesn't, you know, over time just chew through the wiring. Besides that, all the stuff is good to go. Now we can get the bumper and all that stuff back on with no problem. Let's get to it. Alright, so I knocked out a couple of things, like putting this heat shield on. So this is the new heat shield from the 1M. Unfortunately, we can't fit the plastics that were on here originally to cover this charcoal canister, as well as like this whole undersection that ties into the diffuser. Anyways, that diffuser that's from the stock bumper is not going to fit with the quad exhaust, and the customer is actually going to get a replica 1M bumper for the rear, and at that point they'll figure all that out. But I mean, this is pretty much, I mean, it is weatherproof for the most part, so it shouldn't be a big deal with it being exposed like that. And he's not going to go off-roading with this, so it shouldn't be a big deal. All this stuff has O-rings, all the connectors are weatherproof as well. All that should be fine. So the main thing is this heat shield is going to protect everything else from the heat. So now that we've got this heat shield up here as well, I'm going to go ahead and put the exhaust back together, at least up until right here, and then we'll figure out the whole muffler, test fit it, and see how everything works, and then we'll try to put the bumper and all that on as well. That's off by a lot, right?
Yeah.
Alright, so we've made a lot of progress off camera, just doing a couple of little things like putting the tail lights back in, also extending one of the positive battery leads. So this cable that goes all the way to the front of the car, you can't really, like, you know, you can replace it if you want to, but you gotta take everything out. So we just put an actual, like, we put a connector and crimped everything together with the same gauge wire, so that's good to go. We've got all of these cables installed, battery put back in. We had to buy another one of these battery holders, so we went ahead and got that, put that in as well. So battery's nice and secure. Even got this bracket put back on. So now we can literally just start reassembling everything as far as the carpets go, put the seat back in inside, and then we can finally do a test start and see how this new exhaust sounds. So one thing that really bugs me is the body shop that ended up taking some of this stuff apart when it got totaled the second time technically. They didn't put back a lot of the fasteners. So even for this carpet, none of the fasteners were there. I was able to find something that I could use for both of the taillights because it was missing 3 nuts. So I went ahead and put all those back together, but I don't have any of these push pins. So that we're just gonna have to leave as is. We're also missing this cover. Can't really do anything about it, but everything's back together. Here's how it looks. So the only thing that doesn't really look OEM in this case is these 2 wires right here that go to the little Technic charge that's on the positive terminal. So this, like, whenever you get into a wreck, it pretty much disconnects the battery from the rest of the car. And then also pretty much all this electrical tape that I put over this, and that's just for protection. I mean, we did put connectors with a heat shrink and all that, but still I wanted to tape it up just to future-proof it. Final thing is the negative terminal. Bam. Alright, we finally got this clamp tightened down for the muffler section. I went through everything, made sure all the heat shields, everything's nice and tight. We did have to plug one line, so for right now just put a screw in it, just so that way it doesn't have an air leak. We could just disable the active switch for that, and then that'll take care of that as well. All of this heat shield is new. Everything is nice and secure, it's not hitting anywhere, so should be good. Let's try to turn it on, and then we can finish putting the rest of the plastics and all that stuff back on.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
It's gonna be loud too, because it's cold start. So I'm not entirely sure of the brand of this exhaust, but it is very underwhelming. I think the stock one was actually louder than this. We won't know until actually drive it around for a little bit, and once it actually breaks in, I would say, then it'll probably get a little bit deeper, but we're gonna have to drive it around for that. So besides that, I mean, the exhaust is on. It's very disappointing. Man, the quad tips are gonna look really cool, but the exhaust just does not sound as loud as I would want it to be. Oh man. What do I say now?
I don't know. Why does it look crooked? Or is it just the
it's
angle?
Because there's no diffuser there, and then there's still tips that go on top of this.
Oh, okay.
So the tips I didn't put on because there's no point until we have either a diffuser or another bumper on. Man, that sucks. I mean, the exhaust is coming out. Was it smoking?
No.
No, not yet. I still gotta do a few other things on here since we did do the whole clutch replacement. I still have to delete the CDV valve, and once I do that, then we'll actually take it for a test drive. And also I still need to put, the wheels back on, put the fender liners back in as well. But all that stuff is just minor stuff. Let me go and knock that out, and then we can take it for a spin and see how it feels. All right, let's take it out. It's still gonna be a cold start. Let's see how it sounds. Oh, now it's getting louder. Oh yeah, it's much louder now. The other thing that we did while this car was here is we replaced the clutch with a higher performance clutch. So I can't really go crazy with it on, revving it on the street and whatnot. But I will, rev it while we're just in neutral. That way we can get a pretty good sound clip. First I'm gonna let it warm up a little bit, drive it around a little bit, and then we'll go from there. So it actually did start sounding a little bit better once I drove it around for a little bit. It's getting a little bit louder, a little bit deeper, but I still think it's pretty quiet. We'll let the owner decide what to do. Now that we've done that whole conversion, he could put any aftermarket 1M exhaust or even an OEM 1M exhaust if he wanted to. But that's it for this video. Hope it was helpful in some sort of way. At least now you know what to expect if you're gonna do something similar to your 1 Series.